Recently, I got it into my fat head to start trying to stream again, and while playing a couple of matches of DBD, I got into a conversation with one of my viewers about Legion, my favorite killer. I think it would be cool if Legion's Frenzy stabs were permanent. Like, the fact that this happened by itself is crazy, because I never get these right at the start of a match. Most of the time, people will scatter the minute they realize it's Legion, but, like, the thing that I'm thinking is, because they know it's Legion now, I'll never be able to get more than 2 at a time, right? So the idea is make the stabs into tokens instead of like an internally tracked resource when you're in power. Make them into tokens. Have it so that everything that the survivors can do to knock you out of Feral Frenzy will remove a token, and then have it so that you have to get the same number of stabs to get it down. Like, I like the idea of doing that because if you, well, for one, Legion's power is extremely non-threatening late game, because if you kill somebody, you can't get 4 stabs anymore, right? So, like, there's no more down potential in power, and the survivors know that. So, like, they'll tank hits, they'll force you into doorways, like, they'll just let you hit them and then immediately mend in your face. Like, nobody has any respect for Feral Frenzy. So, I figured doing something that would make them have to respect the power, like some minor change like that, would probably do a world of good for Legion players. Legion's in a pretty bad state right now because their power is underwhelming, and balancing it via number control, which is the usual tactic for behavior balancing on something like this, is just not really feasible. See, the power is not weak because of some sort of number value. It's weak because what it does is just not valuable to the trial. Like I said in that clip that I just rolled from my stream the other day, people just don't care about deep wounds, and they probably never will. Mending only really takes a couple of seconds, and you know the Legion is just going to run after somebody else that they see in order to try and get those chain stabs, so you can pretty much start doing it immediately after you get hit. Outside of iridescent button users, the power is also kind of rough to use in chase on somebody who already has deep wounds, because you'll lose track of them. You can't see scratch marks while you're in Feral Frenzy, so high object density, like what's happened thanks to the Pallet upgrade, will make it so that you can easily lose a survivor in all of the clutter, and they can just walk out afterwards and cleanse their deep wounds. So yeah, deep wounds is barely stalling the trial, and survivors are not really paying attention to it much at all. So what do you have going for you exactly on Legion? You're effectively an M1 killer with very limited lethality. And I don't really consider the 5-chain stab mechanic to be a viable strategy for Legion players, because, like I said earlier, smart survivors will scatter to the 4 corners of the map in order to just do gens in 4 different places, and then you will never be able to get that. And additionally, if you kill one of the survivors, that part of your power is disabled. You can't do it anymore. So, like, it's basically might as well not even be there. So, during the many games in which I was looped into oblivion and watched 4 survivors teabag me at the exit gates, I thought long and hard about what could possibly be done to fix the power without having to just completely scrap it, because nobody wants a full overhaul of Legion. Not really. You never really know what you're going to get with one of these, and it might actually end up being a less fun or worse playstyle as a result. So with that in mind, let's go over Legion's current power and then what I came up with. I've got 3 separate options for possible Legion reworks, and I know at least one of them is completely unusable, but the other 2 are pretty interesting ideas, I think. As one of the game's older killers, Legion's power is fairly simple compared to some of the 7-page long powers that we've been getting on recent killers. After activating Feral Frenzy, you get a speed boost up to 130%. You gain the ability to special vault pallets and windows. You apply deep wounds upon hitting a survivor who does not already have it. You gain Killer Instinct to reveal nearby survivors who do not have deep wounds. And you gain access to the consecutive stab mechanic. The consecutive stab mechanic rewards you for hitting 4 consecutive stabs on targets without deep wounds in a single use of Feral Frenzy. After hitting 4 targets, the 5th target that you stab will take 2 health states worth of damage. Now, unfortunately, due to an unreasonable past version of Legion, you cannot stab the same person who already has deep wounds and get a benefit. If you hit the same person multiple times in a row, it will cause you to exit Feral Frenzy. And speaking of the penalty for stabbing the same person, this brings me to the rather impressive list of downsides to the Feral Frenzy power. First off, a simple one. Exiting your power fatigues you for 3 seconds, giving the survivor time to put some distance between you and them before you start swinging with regular M1s. Killer Instinct, the thing that you rely on to track survivors during power use because you cannot see scratch marks, only applies to survivors who do not have deep wounds. You lose all progress towards your 5th consecutive stab when exiting power because, like I said earlier, they have to be in a row to count. Entering power is the equivalent of putting a sheath on your knife because you can no longer do anything more than injure survivors and apply deep wounds while power is active. As mentioned earlier, double stabbing a survivor who already has deep wounds exits power immediately, which also triggers the fatigue from earlier. Missing one of your attacks while in power also exits power, triggering fatigue. For some of the more nuanced downsides of Feral Frenzy, earning a 5th stab does not reset Killer Instinct, because Killer Instinct only displays on survivors that do not have deep wounds, and earning the 5th stab does not reset Killer Instinct to display other nearby survivors. In practice, what this means is that targeting a specific survivor for that 5th stab is nearly impossible unless you planned it out that that survivor would be your 4th hit. And good luck doing that with the way that survivors run away when Legion is in play. Additionally, the 5th stab is basically impossible to earn if you kill someone early, as survivors are not likely to cleanse in the middle of chase if they know that you are close to getting a 2nd or 3rd stab. That means that if somebody is on the hook or dead, 3 stabs is probably the most that you are going to get. Speaking of the way that survivors play when Legion is in the trials, good survivors scatter as soon as they hear guitars in the terror radius. The easiest way to counter Legion's Feral Frenzy is to simply create enough distance between you and your teammates that they cannot cross that gap and get any additional chain stabs, meaning that the power is only useful for deep wounds, which is not useful. Finally, since most of the lethality in Feral Frenzy is attached to that chain stab system, you are directly incentivized to drop chase with a survivor as soon as you hit them, in favor of running to the next closest survivor, assuming there is one. This is a very annoying playstyle for Legion and for the survivors, who are frequently being harassed with a status effect that basically does nothing. With all that said, this is thankfully the part where I get into the first of the 3 options I have thought up for a potential fix to Legion's power comes into play. If you'll recall, 5 years ago when I played that clip from stream of me talking to my one viewer, I previously mentioned that I believe the consecutive stab mechanic should be replaced with permanent tokens. So let's take a look at that. Now, in this first idea, Legion's power is largely the same except for that consecutive stab mechanic. Instead of having to do all 4 of your stabs consecutively, landing a hit while you were in Feral Frenzy would give you a token. Once you have 4 tokens, you can land a 5th hit to spend all 4 of your tokens to deal 2 health states of damage. Changing Feral Frenzy in this way has a small, but I believe impactful effect on the downsides of the power. Even though the same number of stabs are required in order to earn your instant down, having them be bankable means that survivors now have to actively pay attention to how often Legion is landing stabs, and respond whenever Legion uses power in chase appropriately. Additionally, while the fourth survivor might be the most convenient target to use your tokens on, you no longer have to gamble on whether or not you'll be able to find one of the other survivors in time before you waste the stab. This gives you more leeway to drop out of power and resume a normal chase instead of using your tokens, allowing you to save them for a more troublesome survivor or for a situation later on in the trial. This also frees up Legion to continue chases with people early on in the stab sequence instead of having to change targets for the sake of continuing the sequence. If you put this suggestion immediately into practice, the practical effect of it would simply be to make altruism significantly more dangerous. For example, if you see a Legion entering power to chase one of your fellow survivors and you block them in the middle of the doorway, there is a chance, if you have not been counting the number of stabs that Legion has been getting previously in the trial, that you will take a 2 health state hit for your troubles. Every use of Legion's power would therefore become significantly more dangerous, because now you have to worry about whether or not you are making it easier for Legion to end a chase with one of your more vulnerable teammates later on. Much as I would love to simply strengthen my favorite killer without adding any downsides, you can't really do something like this without adding a counterweight to the effect. So I'd probably propose token loss events. The idea behind token loss events is extremely simple. You take everything that the survivors can currently do, pallet stuns, missed attacks, forcing a second hit on somebody that's already got deep wounds, and evading the killer until the timer expires, and you penalize the Legion that allowed any of these things to happen with the loss of a single token. At the basic level, this simply incentivizes survivors to get better at doing the things that they are already doing to evade Legion in power, while also gently steering Legion away from certain playstyles. Looking at you, Fury. If you don't want to lose your tokens in vain, you simply need to learn how to better react to the things the survivors are doing. And if the survivors don't want to just stack tokens on Legion until Legion gets free downs, then they need to get better at doing things like spinning the killer, forcing misses, or timing pallet stuns. Additionally, if behavior is feeling extra generous, they could add in a new audio or visual cue to tell the survivors that Legion has 4 tokens and they might want to be extra careful. If we're going down this route, I'd probably suggest taking the extra music tracks that are typically associated with the mixtapes and overlaying them into the chase music. But that's just me. A couple of add-on adjustments also need to be considered if we want to make this improvement to the power work. First and foremost, we need to do something about iridescent button, because leaving it as is while strengthening the power might be a little bit too much. Suggestion that I have for this is to simply make it so that the special pallet break that triggers from iridescent button consumes a token on use. This way, Legion gets rewarded for actually chasing people down and gaining their tokens with the ability to break pallets. Changing this add-on in this way would introduce an additional decision into the decision-making process of every Legion. Secondly, BFF is definitely going to need a rework, as consecutive stabs are no longer a thing. My suggestion would be to simply change the effect from proccing when hitting survivors during Feral Frenzy to instead transfer the tokens used by Feral Frenzy to BFF. This would mean in order to get the full effect of BFF, you would need to gain and spend 15 tokens during the trial. Possibly would work well with the iridescent button change that I suggested earlier. Finally, Stolen Sketchbook would also need a rework in order for this to work. I would probably suggest just making it so that if you have 2 or more tokens, survivors that are hit during Feral Frenzy will drop their items. Playing with this add-on would also incentivize the Legion to balance their tokens out in such a manner that would allow them to knock items out of the hands of survivors. which could be interesting depending on how skillfully people would be able to do it. And with that, we have officially made it to the end of my well thought out segment on possible reworks for Legion. Now we can get to the less well thought out ones. I've got two of those, one of which I am definitely sure will not work, and the other one might work. We'll see. Let me know what you think. First things first, a proposal that might work. The idea is simple. Deep wounds from feral frenzy can no longer be self-mended. You may ask why this would be one of the suggestions. And, well, to answer your question, it's simply because of one of the downsides of Legion's power that I mentioned earlier. The single most common method of countering a Legion in the trials is to scatter to the four corners of the map. If Legion's deep wounds were no longer mendable by yourself, then you would have to meet up with at least one of your teammates in order to clear them, or else risk downing yourself in the middle of a corner somewhere, which is not good. Forcing survivors together plays to Legion's strengths, because having multiple people in the same spots will lead to you being able to apply deep wounds to multiple people, which gives you a better chance of getting in those consecutive stabs. Now, the theme of this potential change is to be as annoying as possible with your power. Turning the power from a dangerous power into a stalling tactic power by forcing survivors to group up together to get rid of deep wounds so that they can continue working on generators. All of the problems that exist in the current version of the power in Live still exist, but now, at the very least, you have less pressure to try and get consecutive chain stabs, because your power is doing something even if you can't hit 4 in a row. Now, the second proposal does have the added snafu of requiring what is effectively a full add-on pass-through for Legion. Every single add-on that Legion has that activates when a survivor self-mends needs to be changed. Personally speaking, I would change all of them to simply apply to the person that is being mended, except maybe the smiley face pin, because it might be more valuable to apply blindness to the person that mended the injured survivor instead of the injured survivor. All the rest of them should still go to the person that you hit with Feral Frenzy. Additionally, I would like to make a note of the fact that Stylish Sunglasses and Filthy Blade both significantly increase in value as a result of Mending taking more time for more people. Stylish Sunglasses can be used to catch people in groups, similarly to how people use a nurse's calling, and mending time being increased by Filthy Blade is significantly more impactful because you are now stalling 2 or more people instead of just 1. And now comes the time for me to say something truly ridiculous. Something so ridiculous that even I, a person who has never made an actual DBD video on YouTube, am likely to get flamed by all of Dead by Daylight Twitter simply for suggesting it. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Build iridescent button into the Feral Frenzy ability. Yeah, that's right. I said it. And I'll say it again, too. Build iridescent button into the Feral Frenzy ability. That's right. My third suggestion, which I repeatedly stated that I did not think would be viable, is to make the problem that survivors have with Legion in its current iteration even worse. Build iridescent buttons pallet breaking ability into Feral Frenzy and simply have it end Feral Frenzy when you break a pallet. Now, what does this do to the downsides of Feral Frenzy as a power? Absolutely nothing. None of the downsides of Feral Frenzy are fixed by having Iridescent Button be built into the power by default. The only thing that you are doing by doing this is building in an alternate source of utility into the power. Now, in order to actually pull this off, you would need to change the effect of Iridescent Button. But what would we change it to? Well, the suggestion that I came up with was simply to turn it into a budget thwack. Whenever you break a pallet while in chase, all survivors within X amount of distance would scream, revealing their location, and just to add a little bit of power into the add-on, interrupt their current action. You might be thinking, wow, that's a bit much to add into an iridescent add-on, to which I would reply, Krasu has both Brutal Strength and Bamboozle in her add-ons, and nobody said a word about either one of those things being there. I don't even really think anybody actually knows that they're both there. So yeah, it could work if you're willing to go down this road paved in hot coals and hellfire. And really, that's it. I haven't really planned anything else related to any kind of potential Legion rework, so at this point, I'm just trying to let this thought escape. It's been plaguing me for several weeks now, and I just kind of want to get it out in a little bit of detail so that people can look at it and make fun of me for it, or maybe think it's a good idea. I hope. And I hope I have good ideas. I'm kind of stupid, so that's not necessarily guaranteed. Anyway, if you think that this is any kind of good idea, hey, just let me know. Or if you've got better ideas, put them in the comments. Like, I'd like to actually read something, anything that we could do about Legion to make my favorite killer a little bit better so that I don't have to feel like dirt when I get looped by people endlessly because my power is garbage. Really, I just want to be able to play Legion and have Legion be fun, and that was the goal of my token idea. So, yeah, seriously, let me know what you think. If you have any better ideas, let me know. And if I'm misunderstanding something fundamental, send me, uh, well, don't send me anything. Point me in the right direction so that I can better learn about the killer that I deeply enjoy. And really, that's it. That's all for me. Thanks for sticking it out for this long if you stuck it out for this long. And if I ever have another coherent thought, maybe I'll put it into video. Who knows? See you next time.